All right. Hello, everyone. It is Valentine's Day today, so happy Valentine's Day. And I've got some guests with me today. Yeah, it is. I forgot about it until I kept getting Valentine's Day wishes, and then I realized let's track.
Happy Valentine's.
Happy Valentine's
to everyone there. I got O.R.D. here, Long Island Bigfoot, and a friend of mine that does paranormal investigating, Ian.
Hey, what's up?
Today we're just gonna do a little open discussion. I kind of got some video clips to watch, and it just has to relate to content. Some research I've been doing when it comes to trying to figure out where I get voices from. You know, I've always wondered, doing this investigating, I get a lot of EVPs and I get a lot of messages, and I've always wondered where they're coming from. Are they just spirits talking to you from the other side, or could it be something else? So that kind of led me down a rabbit hole of investigating. Hey, Dorian. But that's kind of what I wanted to go over today. Spend a little bit of time watching some videos. Maybe there's some things that we'll learn from it. I know I've learned a lot. So I brought everybody on board just to hang out, watch, maybe talk about it. So one of the persons here that I'm going to get into, that I've watched a lot of videos, and I've learned a lot regarding what I consider relevant to my research. His name is Billy Carson.
Okay.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to share a screen just to give you guys a little background information here. So let me do that real quick. Here we go. All right, I'm talking about Billy Carson. A couple key things I just want to point out, just so you guys know that this isn't just some guy who's giving his opinion about things. Couple key things here. He went to MIT and he got a certification course specializing in neuroscience. So he's very well educated, and in that specialization, that's a big one. You know, so you know this guy's pretty smart. One of the other interesting things I learned about him was right here. In 2014, he founded the First Class Space Agency, which was a nonprofit space agency based in South Florida, which he established the agency with the aim to focus on research and development of alternative propulsion systems in zero-point energy devices having a dual purpose: to aid in space travel and enhance transportation power production on the planet. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Just to give you, just a little background of this guy, Billy Carson. He's got a YouTube channel and a lot of other channels. You find Forbidden Knowledge is where that's kind of his company, and that's, if you look up Forbidden Knowledge on YouTube, you'll find his YouTube information. But I was going to talk about consciousness, and I guess to lead into that, I'll show you a video or two to kind of get into that, so you can see why I was interested and why I thought it had some relevance to doing some paranormal investigating. So I'm going to get into that here, and let me present that to you. Hey, Ted. Hey, Vicky. So let me share. Okay, that's the guy right there. That's Billy Carson. See, Forbidden Knowledge. That's so that's where you can find him. Let's see here.
My son has joined us. Just that's okay.
Oh, all right, cool. What's his name?
Chase the Ghost.
Chase the Ghost. All right. So here we go. Let me do this first of all. I'm going to start at a certain point here, and this will just be a little introduction about him and just a little bit.
The true power that resonates inside of you, and you're supposed to be able to command your reality, command things into existence. And it doesn't mean that you're walking around with a magic wand creating planets and stuff like that.
All right, just pausing it real quick. I want to check and make sure everybody can hear that. If the volume's loud enough.
Hear it, yeah.
If in chat, if you let me know. I just want to make sure it's not too loud. That's my only concern. So if it sounds good, just maybe give me a thumbs up or something to let me know. I made this mistake one time before, and I didn't realize it was too loud and blew everybody out.
Maybe a little louder, if anything. Just like snitch.
Turn it up a little bit.
Just a little bit, not much.
All right.
Just
This
for my
one-
old
this-
man ears.
This one, I think I actually have the volume all the way up. This one's a little lower than the rest, so I don't know if I can do that, but I'll try it.
But it means that because we're living in a fractal universe, and a fractal is basically you are a small part of the whole, to make it very simple. I'm not going to get too scientific and too technical. I don't want to lose you. But if you look at a hologram, for example, if you take out one tiny piece of a hologram and look at it, you'll find out that the entire image is in that little tiny piece of the hologram. The only thing you lose is resolution. This is real science. We're a fractal of the universal consciousness. Every single one of us is an individual fractal of the one source, the divine energy, the divine source that creates everything in the third dimension. So what's happened is the universal consciousness, or this divine energy, has broken itself out into trillions and trillions of entities, or Googles of entities throughout the entire universe, to experience itself subjectively as individuals, even as a blade of grass, even as a rock, even as atoms that have formed into what we call a hominid, or a human being, a human body, and other species that are out there as well. Because why? Because the universal consciousness is on a data collection mission. It wants to collect information and data. Think of the universal consciousness as your brain. Okay, your brain is encased in complete darkness. It knows nothing, it sees nothing, it feels nothing, it senses nothing whatsoever. It has friends though. So its friends get sent out. Hearing, seeing, smelling, touch, feel. It says to his friends, hey, go out there and tell me what's going on. Collect some information and bring it back to me. This is what the universe is doing. The same exact thing, as above, so below. So your brain sends its friends out, hearing, smelling, touch, smell, all your senses. They go out, they collect information. But what they do is they collect data, digital bits of information that they themselves cannot decipher. Okay? Your nose can't decipher the information it's bringing in. Your fingers can't decipher the touch and feeling that they're getting out there. It only can collect data. It transmits that data back to the brain, which is encased in complete darkness, and your brain sorts it all out and then projects a hologram of what's going on out there. And you navigate through the matrix based on that. And I'll disconnect there for a second. And you navigate through the matrix based on that hologram. And that's how you operate and maneuver your avatar body through this electromagnetic field that we call the third dimension. Everything only exists as electromagnetic waves until a conscious observer and vibration frequency collapses that information to a slower vibration, which then we can identify as matter or solidity. But in true reality, solidity and matter, even distance, is all an illusion. Okay. But when I say that you are a God, you have to understand that you have the same commanding powers as a divine energy, just in a very smaller fractalized form inside of your own body.
Okay. Well, there was just a little sample into him talking about the universe and consciousness. And that, like, I don't claim to be an expert at all. You know, that's why I'm just, you know, a guy who's interested in trying to understand maybe what happens with the afterlife and things like that. So that's how I kind of go down the rabbit hole, and I look at guys like him who have a lot of knowledge, and some of the things he said, that's just a little bit that kind of led me towards interest in what he talks about. But it's very interesting to think about when he talks about the universe and how he compares it to like part of a hologram. And it seemed to make a lot of sense, and it gets.
Well,
I
I like that he's giving like power to the people, almost like giving them like that. Not just saying like, oh, you're capable of doing all these things. Like I like the way he broke it down, so you know, in a simple form almost. You know, because there's not much to it, as you could hear from what he says. And like you said, you can't magic wand a planet, but he's talking about like manifesting and like, in a sense, manifesting and doing certain things like that. And I mean, it's true. We have so much more that we don't use, and we're taught that, like, you know, there's these things are so far out of our reach, or they're sci-fi, or they're, fantasy, or whatever the case may be. But there is a lot more capabilities that we have that we can reach out and grab if we do them.
Right. He's very good at explaining things.
Jacques Vallée talks about this as well. He's well known for like the passports begonia and his research in ufology and his connection with the paranormal, connecting the dots, along with Whitley Strieber from Communion. They talk about this interconnection with the paranormal and the spirit realm and the ufology. They talk about this thing about this holographic universe or simulation, and then there seems to be a lot of physicists that are on board with this concept as the years go by. But they've been talking about this for about at least 70, 80 years. But it started to kick in the 70s and the 80s, right? This whole idea about the holographic universe. I think it has some kind of great bearing on what we're all dealing with when it comes to the paranormal or cryptozoology or whatever it may be, right? The fields that we're working in, right? Because there's an awful lot of things that are going on that certainly blur the line, right? So how is this going about? This holographic universe, it talks about this, this whole thing about intention, right? And our thoughts and how our intentions can help manifest stuff. I noticed in my own personal experience when it comes to Bigfoot research that I noticed that I didn't start really having any kind of experiences of any sort until I really used my magnificent magnifying mind, if you will, on the subject, right? And then the things started happening, right? And I was, but it's interesting. Why is, I'll stop for now, but it certainly is a big part of what we're dealing with, right?
Right. Got anything, Ian, that you want to mention there? I want to leave you out.
Oh no. I'm sorry. I want to say I'm sorry. I was a little distracted before I'm babysitting the dogs for my parents this week.
Oh, okay. I couldn't see the screens. I didn't know. Did you have to get up for the dogs, sir? I was watching the screen.
Yeah, I had to. I'm down in the basement right now. It's like a finished basement, but I just went upstairs and closed the door. I had to mute the mic for like a minute or so.
Okay.
It's all good. Screen sharing him, so I didn't want that to be interrupted.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. There's a lot to that. That was just the start, but that leads into what he talks about, how our consciousness is all connected, and I guess that kind of is in par with how he talked about the fractal universe and how we're all parts of it. That leads to talking about the conscious connection.
Right, and then there's the hive mind situation too that we have to take into consideration. Sometimes I wonder if it's how the pros and cons of that, the hive mind situation, and how we. I noticed for my personal journey, when I stopped listening to everybody else's voices, and I started to listen to the voices around me, I'm talking. Well, let's just go for it. We're talking about. I've come to realize there's such things as familiar spirits. Whatever it's placeholder. What familiar energies, if you want to call it, regional, local energies. And then when I stop listening to other human beings and start listening to my inner self and the things around me, I get guided in places with this thing called synchronicity, and weird things start happening. Right. And I think everyone can do this. Is all part of the magic, right? But we have to. There's like this balance between abandoning our own subconscious and that little free will that we have to others. And I think we do it unconsciously. We're trained to do it. If that makes any sense, but I think that the three of you probably can relate to what I'm saying. When you start following your own path instead of others, things start happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think, like you were saying, the hive mind, I guess that could be good and bad, right?
It can be.
As long as if it opens up to two-way and not just one way, having more input from a collection is beneficial. But then if you limit what you get to just something that you feel not open-minded, I guess. Like if you say the hive mind's not open-minded, then it's not good.
Yeah, I think we can see it all in the fields of discipline that we're researching in, right? We see it in this following the group can be very detrimental and coming closer to any kind of evidence of truth or the reality of things, right? So.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and play a little bit more, and I'll give you a little bit deeper into some of the consciousness discussion or information. So I'm gonna go back in and present some more here. This one I'm going
quantum physics has challenged these assumptions, demonstrating that the presence of an observer can significantly alter experimental output of a quantum computer.
That was really important what you just said there.
Yeah.
Numerous contemporary science.
1 second. I think I picked the wrong one.
Well, how the observer can influence the stuff is a really important part to talk about at some point. Because it's us, right? As researchers, investigators, people out in the field, whatever. How much are we influencing what happens, right? With our thoughts.
Oh yeah, I always felt like the attitude you go into investigation definitely matters.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. All right, we'll start her up here.
Imagined. Quantum physics and higher dimensions. Quantum physics might sound like a complex and distant concept, but think of it as the rule book for how things work on a really, really small scale, much smaller than anything we can see. In Carson's discussion, this microscopic world reveals the existence of higher dimensions. In quantum physics, particles do some pretty wild things. They can be in more than one place at the same time, and they can pop in and out of existence without warning. Now imagine particles as tiny messengers traveling between dimensions. When quantum physicists observe these particles, they sometimes find them behaving in ways that don't make sense in our three-dimensional world. This is because these particles could be influenced by forces or laws from these higher dimensions. Just like a puppeteer's strings can control a puppet's movements from above, these higher dimensions could be influencing the particles we see in our world. This idea shakes the very foundations of what we understand about our universe. It suggests that the universe is like a giant jigsaw puzzle, and quantum physics is showing us pieces from parts of the puzzle that we didn't even know existed. It's as if we're getting a sneak peek into a hidden realm, opening doors to new worlds that operate under completely different rules than our own. The human brain, quantum mechanics, and dimensional phasing. The human brain is an amazing organ, but imagine if it had abilities beyond what we know. Carson suggests that our brain synapses, the tiny gaps between neurons where signals pass through, might actually be tapping into these higher dimensions. Think of your brain as a radio, not just picking up signals from our world, but also tuning into frequencies from these other dimensions. This might sound like science fiction, but in the world of quantum mechanics, it's a possibility that scientists are beginning to explore. There's evidence to suggest that these synapses are involved in processes that defy conventional physics, like being affected by quantum entanglement, a phenomenon where particles remain connected so that actions performed on one affect the other, no matter the distance between them. Carson's idea here is that our thoughts might sometimes phase in and out of these higher dimensions. It's like when you daydream and part of your mind wanders off to a different place. What if, in those moments, your mind is actually interacting with another dimension? This could explain moments of extraordinary inspiration or creativity, as if we're tapping into a vast network of knowledge and experience that exists beyond our physical realm.
All right. That was one of the ones that had me interested, especially when it comes to what they were talking about, what he theorized, that your thoughts enter other dimensions, and that's part of like what you'd say is a network of consciousness. And I always wondered, because a lot of the messages I get seem to be like conversation pieces, not always just direct answers talking to me when I'm asking questions. Like I got a broadcast of somebody's conversation somewhere or something, and that when I looked into learning about what just came through there, it kind of made sense that maybe what I was actually hearing or coming through the device could be what he just talked about there, the messages traveling through different dimensions or your thoughts. It could be possible that they were interacting like with my necrometer, especially when I get messages, that I could possibly be picking up conscious thoughts, because sometimes that's what they sound like. So that kind of, that was a little example of what led me down looking into, researching that kind of information.
By the way, Mike, I finally got that app myself. I've been playing around with it a little bit. That and the Necro Dice app also.
Cool.
Other dimensions through the synapses is very interesting. It's, they say that's, we develop them through learning, right? Through new skills as well. We strengthen them, and create new connections. Maybe there's some kind of correlation there too, as far as interacting with these other dimensions. So it's about maybe it's like the information that we receive, right, and intake somehow influences what will be the outcome and these other dimensions. That makes sense.
That makes me think about Mike. I don't know if you could do like a Google image search, but I remember seeing there's a picture that compares the neurons of the brain with like the spider web of like galaxies in outer space, and like how similar they look to each other.
Yeah, and then there's the indigenous cultures and First Nations people that talk about that. It's like we live in a spider web, right? The world, the universe is like a giant spider web, right?
Yeah.
Right, and like he always says, in the big as is in the small, like he talked about the hologram fraction, and how he goes on, he talks a lot more, and he talks about like comparing God powers to what we have as in the big to the small. Everything is like a fractal of the biggest picture comes down in fractal pieces all the way even to us. So
it's like there's a chain of command, like a hierarchy or like a caste system of like, or even categories that people are supposed to be placed in, or like, you know what I mean? And it's not like that. Everything's connected. Everything, like from top to bottom, left to right. Like we're as far as I'm concerned, we're the only thing on Earth that doesn't do what we're supposed to do. Like, we do like all this like willy-nilly crazy stuff. Like a deer is a deer, a leaf is a leaf. But like they don't.
Let me ask you a question, LB. Do you think that we even know what we're supposed to be doing? What happened?
Yeah, like
No.
do you think
No.
choices
No,
you even have free will? Like some people say choice is kind of like an illusion.
Yeah, but we're born into. I mean, especially in the United States. I mean, this whole country was born on. It's like it might as well be like a big stage, in my opinion, like a theater.
I was going to say, like, I think possibly one of the things he talks about too that might relate is how, as in the big, as in the small, we're creators. We are in the image. So that's what we do. And he goes on to explain everything that we do, we're creating. So we're basically the same, just in a different form, but we have the same kind of, we're just a smaller fractal, but we have the same, I guess you could say, like characteristics. And that's what makes us different than like animals and things, because we're made different, and that reflects, that little fractal, what we are is of a creator. And that's what we do.
The physicists they call it the super force. Many of them call it these days, right? Or the cosmic consciousness, the super force. the religions would call it God, right? But whatever it is, it's just a placeholder. The fact of the matter is just something that's greater than us. And somehow when we tap into that magical things can happen, right? Figuratively speaking, right? And magical, how you look at it.
Yeah. I mean, you ever like know the phone's gonna ring, and like even more further, sometimes you know it's gonna ring and you know who's gonna be on the other end, and like how does that happen? And like we so instinctively just pick up our phone and like go to a contact and text the person. But I sat around for a while at one point and didn't do that, and I tried, and I couldn't do it with everybody, but there were certain people that I knew that were like, you know, able to receive like that deep-rooted connection, and I would try to like send them wavelengths and see if they would pick it up, you know, and it wouldn't always be like they would pick it up and call me, but sometimes they were like, hey, I got like the urge to, like, I felt like I was gonna, you know, I should reach out to you, like I don't really know why, and vice versa. I've had it happen with me too, where, you know, quite often.
Synchronicity, once again, right? So we're talking about synchronicity.
Yeah.
Right, and that might be tie into what I started looking into this. I learned about quantum entanglement, and there might be something to that might have to do with others. There might be something with someone else that is with you, and they say no matter how far apart, like two parts could be, when one does something, the other knows.
Yeah.
So that might be part of why some people, you know, might have some kind of a connection where they might understand what's going on with someone else, even though they're not there.
You know, if you think about what we're doing right now, or like a reflection, right? Fractal reflection of what you're talking about. So just think about it. So something motivated you, Mike, MT, to reach out to me. Something influenced you.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever that was, something probably that was outside of yourself, but influenced you. Maybe it was, then we talk about these energies that are around us that we call spirits or whatever you want to call them, you know, because I'm not going to argue about what you call them, because I just call them placeholders at this point, because I don't know. But the fact is something influenced us, other things greater than us, and the next thing you know, someone reaches out, and then there's four guys of similar or something like-minded in something to try to suss out an issue or a question, find an answer, right? Because if you think about it, I'm in Northwest Ohio, Mike, you're on the other side of Ohio, and then you got one, you know, LIB's in obviously Long Island, and I'm not sure where are you. Ian, are you in Ohio as well?
Yeah, I live in the same city as Mike does. I actually ran into him in the woods.
Okay, that's
right.
So here we are, and then all the people and the chat and watching you know, from all the different parts of the world, and why are we all connected right now? You know? What influenced us? I think that's part of the question, right? What has influenced us to search out the answers to these questions?
Yeah, and when I set up the podcast today, when I was thinking about doing this, and I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to do it this way. Automatically, I kind of already knew who I was going to ask. Come on. So I can definitely say that, you know, that there was something to that, because I didn't have to sit around and be like, who should I ask? I like automatically knew, you know, I'm going to reach out to Ian. I'm going to reach out to Mike. You know, and the cameraman, I reached out to him. He forgot it was Valentine's Day, but his girl reminded him, so he kind of had to take one for the team for say today.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I actually had a question for everybody. Like, what I've been doing like paranormal research for like about 1.5 years now, and I still seem to be about as sensitive as a brick. A lot of times I'm more focused on the equipment and the technology and everything, but like as investigators, how sensitive have you guys been to this stuff? Like they say you shouldn't even use equipment when you're starting out. You should just like walk around and get a feel for everything.
So I did it. I did it more or less because I was broke as hell, and you know what I mean? But it worked out that way where I did it for a while with the bare minimum. Only like probably a couple, 2 or 3 years in did I start gathering equipment.
MT, you just made me have to apologize to my ex. I forgot all about Valentine's. Now I understand why she wants my son here overnight. I'm just like, man, she just using me as free babysitter. I forgot it's Valentine's Day. If just somebody reminded me, you reminded me. So now I have to swallow crow and apologize. There you go.
I'm sorry for interrupting that for you.
Real quick, Constance, I what I was getting at, which I'll show more videos and we'll talk more. We'll keep going, but it was the content with some of the videos was relating to consciousness and the universe as one collective consciousness, and that's some information like I've been looking into and learning from Billy Carson, who was in those. The other person was talking about Billy Carson's research in that last clip. But that information was kind of leading up to where I feel the communication from spirits. It might have something to do with multidimensional communication, and I think some of it might not be spirits communicating. It possibly could be conscious thoughts that are traveling multidimensionally, which is kind of what that talked about. But yeah, go ahead. You're back to asking us about what you thought about investigating kind of from the minimum.
Well, I was just basically asking, like, how good is your guys' intuition or sensitivity to the spirits? Like, are you able to, like, really feel them out, you know?
Yeah,
and
most days.
Do you think that's, like, quantum entanglement, too?
I don't know necessarily what quantum entanglement is, but per se, like, as a whole. I mean, all I know is what we talked about here today, but, yeah, I mean, I was, like you said earlier, like a brick. That's how I was before I came into this stuff. And, I started doing, like, Reiki and yoga and stuff like that, meditation, and that helped me transition. I started adapting all that stuff. I started rolling the things that I knew, martial arts, whatever, like, all the things I knew, mixed martial arts and the discipline and the calmingness, and I turned Reiki into like a walking Reiki, and like the breathing from the yoga, and like all sorts of shit. I just combined it into what I do out there, and I was not a deep, connected person, but it just happened. It just happened for me.
That's how you connected. Like you felt like that was part of your connection, right?
I know for me, being present, right? And I don't do anything fancy, but I mean, you're talking about this sensitivity of recognizing there's some kind of force or beings, or I mean, I feel them all the time, right? And guys, it's like that feeling that you feel on the back of your neck, or something's right behind you, right? There's something's beside you, this kind of stuff, or if something motivates me to take my camera and film this way, or to go out in the field.
Right.
That's one things that I like. For me, this is how I do it now. Not that I'm telling anybody else how to do things, but for me, it's like I don't even go out in the field unless something prompts me to do it. I mean, that thing, that energy, those forces that we call familiar spirits, regional, local spirits, whether it's Sasquatch or etc., which is, I think that what we're dealing. Sasquatch represents about 1% of what we're really, from my experience, right? At least for me, it represents about 1% of what's actually we're dealing with, right? But yeah, it's those who have interacted with it. We come to, many of us at least, come to the conclusion that we're dealing with something that's interdimensional, paraphysical, that's beyond the physical. So, for saying that, then you start discovering that there's other things along for the ride, if you will. And I feel a lot of times. I'll be honest with you, I was talking to them last night. I sent you that video, my MT, the one about poltergeists in the woods, right? And it's like the fascinating things that happens, like messing with electronics, right? My computer just stopped working. The connection, right? It was dropped, and I'm like, there's no wind, there's no bad weather. Why did it drop? You know what I mean? During the time, it's these little subtle things you start to recognize, right? That they're influence us in so many different ways, right? what they are exactly, that's the question for all of us, right? If we're, at least for me, I mean, some people feel really not fanatic, but certain of what they're dealing with. But for me, I know I'm dealing with something or some things. I just can't tell you what they are all the time. I think they were dealing with, this is where it comes to this quantum, these multiple parallel universes, you will. I'm under the impression that as you walk from point A to point B, from one end of your room to the next room, you're actually walking through, think of like layers of sheets of paper, right? And you're walking through one dimension after another. You can't sense it, you can't feel it at times, but sometimes you can. That's, how does that happen? Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Yep.
And there's some of the videos I'm going to show go into talk about multidimensional aspects as well. So that could be a good lead into watch that.
Sure.
Let me present that. See what you guys think.
Guys,
Yeah, maybe you're right, Vicky. Maybe that's what the veil, or multiple veils. Maybe there's multiple veils, right?
Yeah, well, the energy doesn't get destroyed; it just transforms. So into what and
And
where?
of quantum physics.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. I didn't mean to. Go ahead.
No, that's all right. I clicked the wrong button. All right, here we go. We'll go into the one of the video about 11 dimensions real quick here. This one got about a 3-minute segment out of it that I'll play.
So I dug real deep into it, and I got to the understanding that we're living in a multi-dimensional universe, and there's at least 11 dimensions. Otherwise, the universe would collapse. Each dimension is a 90-degree angle right above the next one, compactified. So they're sitting right on top of us. So within less than a Planck unit of space above you, there's another dimension that actually exists with a whole nother universe happening simultaneously while we're sitting right here. Wild.
That's hard to fathom. It's hard to fathom. So right here where we're sitting right now, there's a whole nother dimension of a whole nother universe happening, life taking place.
Yes.
Right in the same space that we are.
Right here where we are. Right here. Vast too, vast. Just as vast as ours is vast. And from higher dimensions, they experience time differently. Time really doesn't exist. The past, present, and the future happen all at once. So somebody, for example, from the 5th dimension would look at us and they'd be able to see us. Imagine us in this building here, but imagine when I first walked in, and imagine us in here, and imagine me like in the bathroom or something. They'd be able to see us in all the different rooms. The different rooms represent different time frames of existence within this structure. So they could see the past, present, and future at the same time. So it's pretty cool. Weird stuff starts happening the higher the dimensions you go.
So is the idea that when you're in a higher dimension, you can see below lower dimensions, but you can't see dimensions above you?
Exactly, unless you have the capability of matching. First, you have to obtain the frequency of a higher dimension and then match that frequency to be able to walk in. So
match the frequency.
Yeah. So for example, okay, my hand is stopped now by this table, right? Why is it stopped? I'm not really touching the table. There's repulsion going on. Electromagnetic repulsion between the electrons in my hand is repelling the electrons in the table. You don't really touch anything. Now, if I can match the subatomic frequency of the atoms in this chunk of wood here on this table, I could, with my hand, I would be able to pass my hand right through this table unscathed. Why? Because atoms are 99.999% empty space. Nothing is really here. Everything is only a light wave slowed down to a particular frequency. And so if you can match frequencies, you can merge with things. You can walk through walls and all that kind of stuff. The things that seem paranormal could be advanced beings have tapped into some type of understanding of how to match different frequencies in our dimension and appear apparitional or paranormal. But in true reality, they could just be taking a peek in.
And how do we come to the understanding that these higher dimensions exist? Like, what is the most basic evidence that we have of this?
Quantum physics proves it. See, when we look into the quantum world, everything changed. In standard physics is where we are right now, in the large side of physics. But the smaller you go, the more weird things get. We find that particles transphase in and out of existence, and they go to different dimensions. We even know now that some of our synapses of our thoughts in our brain phase out of this dimension and they go somewhere else, and then they come back again. And this has all been tracked and traced through the understanding of quantum mechanics and quantum physics, and understanding that dimensions exist. The biggest way that we made
I'll go ahead and stop it there. Yeah, right there, what he just mentioned about the synapses and the thoughts and how they've kind of discovered that those synapses or thoughts will phase out of this dimension and into another and back. That was kind of what interested me in thinking that possibly what I've been getting when it comes to voices, and how like they seem kind of random, almost like there's some thoughts, you know, like the voices, the things that are being said sound like, or you know, they're like residual, which is residual, like they're just conversation. It made me think, could these be thoughts? You know, somehow could these thoughts or synapses that are traveling through multi-dimensions somehow be able to interact with like my device that can put together those thoughts like that, and that's what's coming through my device. That was one question that kind of went through my head, and when I listened to him and I heard that kind of clicked a little bit, like that's a possibility. And not necessarily saying that that's what it is, because you know, this is all just still gathering information for me. Like I said, I'm not an expert, but listening to someone like him explain that kind of, you know, kind of made a little light go off in my head and wonder, could that possibly be some of the voices that I hear and the things that are being said coming through? Could it be something like that?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, go ahead, bro.
All right. So the thing is, I think about location. So he brings up about the beginning of this. So we talked about it's like the universe is like a checkerboard, or another way, it's like gridded. So like I was talking about, we were walking through like layers of paper one way. Now if you put across it section and layers of paper going that way, it's just to visualize it. It's not literally paper, obviously. And then you could then cross hatch it, and so in other words, just think about you're walking through this whole thing, and you're like, you're walking through a giant multi-dimensional grid, right? And each little square represents some moment, some time, some thought, some place. If that makes sense. So if you go back to your whole, you know, when I think about like your devices you guys use in your paranormal research, you know, how much of that is important is location, positioning, where you're at, the time, etc. Right? So that's all variables involved in it. So what would have happened if you take those devices and you were to just angle them a certain degree, a fraction of a degree, one way or the other, how would that influence it, you know, as far as the communication that would happen?
I wanted to add one thing real quick. Sorry, and just one thing, Bob, before I forget. When I heard him talk about that, you know, about the multidimensional, and he talked about matching the subatomic frequency and being able to, like, basically, if you're able to match subatomic frequency with another object with your hand, it'd pass right through it. Yeah. Have you ever heard people talk about remote viewing?
Sure.
Right. Yeah. And when I hear them talk about remote viewing, it seems like that's what they're doing. They're going through in a form. They're like passing through doors, through objects. So it seems like they have like matched the subatomic frequency of going into like another part of a dimension, like a fourth dimension, you know, and they're able to like go through objects. And I've heard some of them talk about even the feeling of passing straight through a wall. And that always like interests me, you know.
And then you're talking about other body experiences, astral projecting, and the near-death experiences. You connect those things in it. And what's interesting is that when you pay attention to these everyone's experiences, they're different, aren't they? There's no universal set place that everyone goes. Have you noticed that?
Right.
every time they leave their body or they have a near-death experience, they might have similar things. Like usually they have to do cultural things or religious things, and things that they're familiar with, that kind of stuff. But when you start to break it down, why don't they all go to this wonderful magical place that's all full of like lovely trees and flowers and magical colors? In fact, is everybody goes to somewhere different each time. You look at Bob Monroe's work, the Monroe Institute, and about his work and other kind of stuff, and it's like the inconsistency that he was experiencing. He's documented, and I think that's something that we're going to have to deal with, the inconsistency, and recognize this, because we're going to a different place every time. Just by a slight movement, a slight positioning of equipment, if you were going to the same place that you researched, in this very sex place, and you went there every single day for the rest of your life, because we're dealing with something that's so magnificently complicated, right, and so diverse, and that you could put that device in the same place every time, and just the little movement of a hair or whatever is going to affect it in some way, some form. How do you guys feel about that?
But I find the idea interesting that like what we see or experience as paranormal activity is, or like what our devices capture is, possibly like collisions with parallel universes or other dimensions.
Yeah, it's never universal, the messages, is it? I mean, from just my observation, I'm not doing what you guys do, but for observing MT and his work, it's like there's some things are subtly consistent, but most things are not, are they? As far as the messages, I mean, it's
right.
like different.
Well, you're getting kind of like fragments of messages and stuff,
And then,
right.
Yeah,
that's what made me start looking more into why are they just fragments and not always I'm communicating. The voices, what's being said isn't always just communicating to me like directly. It's not answering my questions. It's not telling me something that is like a conversation with me. It just seems like it's like I'm picking up conversations that are bits and pieces of someone talking. And then that's what made me start looking deeper into what am I hearing? Where is it coming from? But it's never really
how much of it, how much of this is us? I mean, there's our intention to get to that place, to have that moment happen, but how much of it is actually them really trying to communicate with us? Bigfoot's the same way, right? If it really was, we had much control over it, a guy like, Long Island Mike here, he would be seeing a Bigfoot every single day. They don't happen that way. So so it's like there's just so many factors involved in it. There's our intention, but then we have to be at the right place at the right time. It's almost like a presentation is given to us. It's like you could be in this field research, and it's probably the same thing with the paranormal research. Like you get a guy, like remember the first encounter I had with a Bigfoot, the guy standing next to me, the Crow Indian Medicine Man, he saw eye shine. I didn't see it. Right? We're standing right next to each other. So just to have that, a couple part difference in position will affect what you hear and what you see. How is that possible?
That just goes to say the complexity of what you're dealing with.
Yeah, it's really complex. That's what it is. It's amazing, isn't it? This stuff leads you to quantum physics, bro. Good. I mean, that's over my pay grade, but I tried. But
and he said that thing about like putting his hand through the table and stuff, and then like it looks paranormal, but it might be an advanced being. Like it reminded me directly of Sasquatch, like how people always say they see them, walk into trees or they pass through trees, and like, it sounds just like what they do out there in the woods. Now, my understanding was that they're like multi-elementals and they're connected to the forest and whatever, but I mean, maybe there's some quantum physics involved there too. I'm not going to say I have all the answers. I'm just making the best, estimated guess off of what I, experience and like what I see. I mean, I'd be ignorant to say like, oh, I know what the hell's going on. You know what I mean? But, like the frequency comes into play there too, and that's what I try to do. I try to vibrate at the same frequency, and like if I don't think I can reach that level of like, you know, whatever what I usually reach them at, if I'm having an off day, if I'm like all screwed up and I can't like vibe properly, like I'm not gonna waste my time going out there, because first of all, I might attract something God knows what if I'm like in a foul mood or I'm just having a shit day, because I'm human.
Oh yeah, like I said, attitude, man.
Yeah, like I'm not
attitude going into your investigations.
Yeah. So like when I have that like good moment where like I'm really like riding high, like on a good day or whatever, like that's the times I love getting out there, because I'm like, shit, I'll probably be able to manifest something good, like based off my vibration and frequency.
I hear
Right.
it.
Yeah.
MT, are you tempting us with that Derek's question?
Well, I mean,
you're talking. This is a guy that studied the Bible for a decade intensively, so you probably don't want to hear my answers.
we don't have to go into it. I just, I read it, and
I just get everybody wants to know where I'm at with it. In May, I burnt it. I had a ceremonial ritual, and I burned it in front of my sacred maple tree, and I said, this is black magic, and it's dark magic, and it's not telling you the whole truth here. They captured it in one little thing and captured our minds in a very narrow way of thinking, which is really not a good idea, especially if you want to have a better understanding of the complexities of the reality around us. So is there evil spirits? Probably. We live in a dualistic system. But you can't say that just because that thing looks like a monster that we were indoctrinated to believe in through Hollywood and all that that's actually a monster.
Yeah.
You can't judge a book by its color in all aspects of life.
Yeah, and everybody's had different experiences too.
Right.
Like I can't say when I've heard some messages that were really, really nasty, like vulgar, and basically like coming at me with, like threats, and I just listen to it, and I try to make peace with it, because I know whatever's communicating is angry still in some form or another.
So, my second encounter with Sasquatch, I had 3 days of absolute torment. It's totally real to me, and it was the whole thing, and it influenced my son, my neighbor upstairs. He actually hadn't seen it. I saw what looked like Sasquatch, but there's a whole lot of other things there. And I look back on with hindsight's 2020, and learning from progress and development and understanding, it was torment. It was everything that people talk about. But for me, it was part of my dark night of the soul to wake up and to realize the wrong direction I was going at. This comes back to this personal sovereignty thing. At the end of it, I'll just say this: for 3 days, I called upon Jesus, having prayers. I've seen him call up people that were famous deliverance ministers and all that. Did everything they said. When it stopped is when I got mad after being woke up 3 a.m, and I F-bombed the living heck out of it, scared that Sasquatch was on my front porch, and I heard it banging in and everything, which my neighbor actually saw it walking in our backyard, and it stopped. All that torment stuff, all the negative stuff, when I took my own personal sovereignty. I think that that's part of what we're talking about here, is that we are being a part of the super force, people call it God, whatever that is, because good luck trying to really define that, right? The fact of the matter is, we are something, there's a divine spark in all of us, and each of us has a bit of authority in this situation, right? We have some way of defending ourselves against the bad that's out there, those things that we perceive as evil. And I think a lot of it for me was because of my perception, my own ignorance, and the biases that I created and other people gave me. And when I challenged the biases and the belief system I had, things changed to the positive. Does that make sense? This goes back to this whole thing of the hive mind in the group and how dangerous it can be. We end up turning it into religions and cults and stuff like that. And we have to be careful in our research, because we see that happening in the paranormal, right? Or in ufology, or definitely in Bigfoot. I mean, this cult mentalities, group of thinking that can keep us from becoming a closer truth of who we are and what's around us. So, sorry, I sound like a preacher, don't I? But I just,
like Vicky said, if you think I think if you seek evil, you find it. If you seek good, you find it. And I think a lot of it has to do with, like you were saying, Mike, how sometimes you can feel your own frequency. Maybe you could tell something's not is off, and you don't want to try to engage when you're in, that when you have that feeling. I think that like a lot of the activity and things that you hear and experience have to do with, they talk about the frequency of your body, and your mood affects that, and that basically could affect the whole outcome of what kind of interaction you get.
So if this, for me, like, when I was in that religious mindset, and what happens is, to me and a lot of other people, is the whole focus is on we live in a dualistic system, right? The night and day, darkness and light. We've talked about this before, MT. And the fact of the matter is that there is this thing that we call evil, and there's this thing called good. And if you focus so much on the evil, guess what's going to happen? You're going to get a lot of evil. And that's what happens in these religions, basically, because you focus so much on, these things that you've been told are evil, and these characters, and that what happens is bad things happen. I mean, they really do. I mean, when you realign yourself and try to stay in the middle, if that makes any sense, try not to be so
one way or the other.
Yeah, stop being so judgmental about everything, and stop acting like you know what the heck's going on. When I started doing that, things started changing for the better. You know what I mean?
Ian, you got some thoughts on that?
Well, I kind of like, I am more of a loner type of person. I do kind of try to go off and do my own thing and try to make my own destiny, but at the same time, I kind of, just feel like I'm just here going along with the ride, And
go with the flow,
try
bro.
to do the best. Yeah, I try to go with the flow and try to do the best that I can and be the best person I can.
That's it. Well, I have one more segment to show. We can go into some more, talk about that. Let me present that real quick.
You got to be smart to go to MIT, man. I had a good friend from high school. He had a photographic memory, literally. He went to MIT as well. I have no idea why he hung out with me. I think it's because in high school we partied, so that's the reason why. And we're punkers, so thank you.
Actually, I think I already covered that. I'll just go with a couple shorts from Billy Carson here. This one was
every single cell in your body is at 0.07 millivolts of electricity, and you have 35 billion cells. Multiply that, you're at 2.65 or so trillion volts of electricity in your one body. You're a walking nuclear explosion. This is where the Qigong energy comes from. This is where Reiki healing energy comes from. It's extracted directly from the cells in your body. It's not mysticism, it ain't magic. No, it's real. When you understand how to tap into the energy meridians in your body and extract the energy directly from the cells in your body and focus them, you now have healing power. I was studying quantum physics, and I came across all the double slit experiment and wave particle duality. So electrons make conscious decisions to be solid matter or waves, and photons do the same thing. And everything exists as a wave of potentials before it even becomes collapsed into matter based on conscious intervention. So the reality came to me, the only thing that does exist is consciousness, and it's all the same one. It's all the same consciousness. What it is one radio station, imagine, right? And that one radio station in your neighborhood is broadcasting out 99.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5. Each avatar body encapsulates a particular dot number of that frequency, and that frequency animates our avatar body so we can experience life in this dimension, but we're all coming from the same source. Now we're getting closer to understanding consciousness isn't made inside this avatar body, that the avatar body doesn't even exist. Consciousness is a stream of something coming from somewhere else, and it's being picked up in this matrix with this coding. We even know now that some of our synapses of our thoughts in our brain phase out of this dimension and they go somewhere else, and then they come back again. And this has all been tracked and traced through the understanding of quantum mechanics and quantum physics. So what does that mean? What's here? There's only one consciousness, it seems. And it's like a radio station that's transmitting out a frequency from a higher dimension. Our avatar bodies pick up that frequency. You're 99.1, I'm 99.2, he's 99.3, but it's still coming from the same source. And so we're all coming from the same source. It's like the universe has found a way to live subjectively through multiple entities, but not even through entities, even through objects that we consider to be man-made, because every atom we know now in quantum physics is also conscious.
There you go.
Consciousness is something that's streaming from something else. Isn't that interesting? It's fascinating that there's still the struggle. It's the ultimate quest, right, to truly define or to know what consciousness actually is, isn't it?
See, one of the things I picked up from what he was talking about there and listening to him is about the consciousness of basically everything and how everything's connected. And I think one of the reasons why some people have the ability to make some kind of a connection, and that manifests itself into interactions from things paranormal, voices or entities. And I think part of your own like frequency, how you are, and if you're the kind of person who really understands, or just maybe just had a natural feel like this kind of related to me, because I really always treated everything with some kind of respect. Like I would never just throw something or break something. It's just, there's like, I think part of that, and there's like some understanding maybe I had that somehow there's a consciousness and it's in everything. And, nature. And I think parts of that part of you might be what makes the connection, whatever you do. And that might be why we manifest things while we're searching for them,
Yeah.
I think this is so
What's that, Mike?
If I step on a stick and break it, like, I don't know why, but I'm like, oh, sorry, like,
right.
Like, I don't know why, but like, it's like I just stepped on a rabbit and like, it died. Like I have this same, I don't know why. I don't know when and where that happened, but it's like, it's happened.
Right. And I think that some of us have an understanding. I think some of us just have, and this might have to do with something to do with our consciousness and possibly of this traveling of consciousness and information. Some of us may have been given the understanding that everything is conscious, and we kind of respect that. And that's why we treat certain things certain ways.
There's so many things involved.
Yeah.
So the consciousness and us being like packets of energy, or like a giant representation of the atom, right? It's funny that an atom has, like he said, 99.999% empty space. And guess what the universe is made of? The same freaking number, they say, 99.999% plasma. So that's something to think about in this equation, right? But the other thing is, too, when you start looking at other people's concepts about the dualistic nature that we live in and the avatar that we live in, and how that actually the mind, the body actually interferes with our true essence and to connect with this ultimate consciousness. When you think about disease, health issues, the environment, which you eat, all these things influence how close you're going to be to this greater consciousness and so when you start thinking about that stuff, that really makes you start wondering, why? How did we end up here? Because it's like what I'm hearing from everybody is some way or another that we're greater than we really realize who we are. That we're more than this meat suit. Tell me if I'm wrong here. And this meat suit, the eyes are limited, and it's the vision of what we can see. Everything about the meat suit, something happened to us. Just put it that way, right? It's like we can go into such deep issues here, philosophically, theologically.
Lots of
like medical science, however you want to put it, has biology, I guess, right? Whatever. I don't know to what extreme it goes. I mean, I guess it's, it depends. But right, like our vessel, our human body has been defined and given limits. Like, this is what you have and this is what you can do. But I don't believe in that. Like, it's just a vessel. And like, there is more to it. But like, I like that he mentioned Reiki and Qigong and like, and then brought up frequency, and like, that's what I do. That's basically one of my main formulas. It's like connecting my life energy out there, putting that frequency out. If you and Jack and Trapper or whatever, you guys all go out and you have walkie-talkies and you're within really good range of, reaching each other, right? Like a half a mile, but you're not dialed in. right? Like if you're not dialed into the same frequency, you'll never hear each other, feel each other, connect. Period. Right? Through those walkie
The question is, LOB, is that it's even possible to even happen, or can it on a consistent basis, or can it only just happen once, or can it happen on a consistent basis? This is where our limitations. This is why we need electronics and we need these gadgets and all that. Is because
I do it, but it's a matter of
we're living in an avatar that has over 5,000 genetic flaws. I mean, these are things that we have to put it all in the variables of what we're dealing with. The meat suit in ourselves influences on what we can sense and feel and see. And that causes us to have limitations. So that's why we need these gadgets. But yet our true essence has this desire to interact with something greater than what's here. That's why you guys are pretty much doing the paranormal research. That's why I'm assuming, Mike, it's the reason why you're constantly going out there, because you want to interact with Sasquatch, something greater than what is in the present, the physical. And these are things that we have to, these are variables that we have to take in consideration. And so I think I'll stay there. So,
yeah. I also think that's also why, like, we're getting closer and closer, more connected online. But a lot of people say, like social media and stuff is so toxic. Perhaps maybe because we're on different wavelengths or frequencies.
It depends on the situation. Absolutely. It depends on where you're at, right? If you're out there just for the dopamine fix, then yeah. And if you're just out there just to be heard, that's one thing. But I mean, I get the impression tonight, 4 of us are having a very civil, intelligent, and thoughtful conversation.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So it can happen. It just depends on people getting together who really want that to happen. Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
I just find that interesting because, we're getting closer connected, but we seem to be isolated. A lot of people are,
Yeah, but this marginalization, that's another thing that we need to talk. If you guys want to talk about it, is because I'd venture that all 4 of us, and many people in the room, have some form in our lives of this marginalization, or what you call being loner, or not just being by yourself, or spend a lot of time alone. And I think that this isolation is necessary for us to kind of break free, if you will, from the physical constraints that we're in, right? If that makes sense. In other words, in order time to think, to reflect, to ponder about things, of where you're at, and then to find people that want to have a deeper conversation. And I think it's important to those of us who really want to know the truth. We have to find it. We don't have to agree on everything. That's an impossibility. You know what I mean?
No, there's no way, bro. I mean, I talk about this all the time. If Kim, Joe, Dan, Mike, and John are standing in a row and they're all looking the same way and a rock gets tossed at their feet, they all experience the same exact thing, right? But they're all going to tell a different story a little bit, because one might say they got attacked, one might say, oh, that was awesome, and throw it back. One might be like, oh, that was funny, and one might be like, holy shit, I hate the woods, I'm never going back out there. You know what I mean? So, like, yeah, of course, there's, perception comes into play too, and like, there's so many different things, like, so of course, like agreement, it's like such like, when people are like, oh, like, we have to agree on everything, like, yeah, you fucking mind? Like, sorry, Mike. But like, it's never gonna happen. Like, nobody's ever going to agree. Literally, it could be posted all over everywhere that, the sky is blue, let's just say, but you're still gonna have people who are like, no, like, look at the flat earthers and all this and that, you know what I mean? There's always going to be somebody that goes against the grain, or goes against this, or goes against that, and it's just the way the world works. And that's, it's everyone.
It would probably seem that, I guess, to find out what kind of things you experience, especially if you're doing some kind of paranormal research, whatever kind of whatever you're looking into, that the things that will occur might be a little bit more personal, and you'll find out more if you're actually experiencing for yourself, not necessarily around others.
Yeah.
So exploring it individually could lead to different kinds of discoveries, because adding other people, if there's a way, if you're talking about like whatever you're interacting with, if it's interacting based off of like each person's kind of aura or energy, then it could have different interactions if you're with two people that have different kinds of project different energies or different
Yeah, well, I've had people go out with me that really dull my shine, and then I've had people that enhance my shine. You know what I mean? Like, and then there's times where I go out with people and like it's like they're really, we just walked around the woods and like, you know, they missed out on everything, and then there's other people that are so dialed in that they're like, hey, this happened, this happened, this happened, and like it makes me have these aha moments. So I mean, sometimes I love being by myself, and other times I love having people around, and it depends.
And like that's what I've come across too, like with working with the cameraman, because the cameraman and I could tell, I mean, I haven't really spent a lot of time with a lot of different people, but him and I, there was something to us just that we clicked together. And when we go and do places, so definitely the experiences could be on a different level, which could be more, you could say, amazing than by yourself. But then, like, I guess it's good to, if you're going to do this kind of research, to explore that, find others that seem to work off of each other and add better positivity, you could say, and see what kind of experiences you have. And then even work by yourself and see how things work out with just you.
Well, there's different perceptions, like we were just talking about, and different attitudes, different whatever. So, like, some people are just gonna, never contribute anything positive, whatever. But everyone has a view and a puzzle piece that you might, and it's just the way we're products of our environment, right? Like, or like we've only explored so far, and like the next man and the next woman next to you, they've learned different things along the way, and like, it's great to combine forces with people if like you want to expand, and yeah, you guys complement each other very well. You guys have the similar styles but different styles, and like, but you communicate on a flawless level, which is the most important part, right?
Ian, anything?
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to get like a different outlook on like different ways of investigation, and like it can open up your eyes to other things, I guess.
You have a team, right?
Well,
I mean, from time to time.
Yeah,
we work with.
I work with my sister and her boyfriend, and yeah, we've investigated a bunch of places, but yeah, I mean, we were thinking about trying to come up with like a whole name, and we're gonna try to do like a business card or something, and like t-shirts or something, but they're pretty busy with life, I guess.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: do you guys because you work a lot? I mean, from what I could tell, you do a lot of work by yourself. Do you notice a difference when you have others with you than when you're by yourself? Have you noticed anything kind of like inherently different?
Well, other than it being like a lot easier, because then you have like a cameraman or somebody to help hold the camera for you.
I meant like anything as far as like the different energies together. Do you ever actually notice any kind of different interaction?
Oh yeah, my sister's boyfriend Clark, he's more sensitive, a lot more sensitive than I am to spirits, because he actually was like clinically dead for like a few minutes during a surgery, and then thankfully he was able to come back to life. But he seems to think that that's one of the reasons that like spirits are like drawn to him.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot.
And so yeah, like a lot of times we get more activity when he's around, and it's good because he can kind of sense different areas or hot spots of a location.
Okay.
And my sister, she kind of She kind of makes things more lighthearted, I guess, and she tries not to be too serious and kind of makes us laugh.
I sometimes I wonder with the when people are pronounced clinically dead, and like somewhere around after my brain injury is when I started to experience things, and like I sometimes wonder if it's like the reset button. You know what I mean? It's like you're wiped. It's almost like your slate is wiped clean, and like you get this like like empty brain, like to like kind of start over with. You know what I mean? And like I try to see a bright side of having that happen, and like that's one of the few things I could think of that might have occurred, because I've talked to other people that have had TBIs or been pronounced technically dead or clinically dead, whatever, like shit like that. Things that are very similar, and it seems like that was like a restart point. I just call it the reset button because I don't know what else to call it. But.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of the experiences with out of body experiences, and that seemed to always. I mean, from the remote viewing, like when I've listened to some people talk about remote viewing, especially when it came to like the government's involvement with working with remote viewing, the main person that they started with, it started after he actually died.
Okay.
And in his research, he talked about when he was interacting with others that were, kind of the same kind of gift. It all stemmed from reaching the point of almost being dead for everyone, or technically dead and coming back. It seems to be the common thing. So at some point, I guess some kind of trauma that affects you physically, maybe not necessarily dying, but something severe could be kind of a change that ends up.
This goes back to when I was talking to you, my MT Mike, earlier today about I mentioned something about anti-structure and structure and how that influences life. So when we have major events, we call that anti-structure. That's what they call it, at least. And what that means is that we live our lives very structured, orderly lives. You know what I mean? And then something major happens, like a brain injury or a near-death experience, or a moving up from your house, or remodeling your house, or a war, or a divorce, or a breakup. And these moments of anti-structure is when there's a higher propensity for having some kind of paranormal event. So that's something to think about. And then, what was I going to say? I was going to say something else, but I lost my train of thought. But that's the thing. I would ask everyone else to think about this and see if you notice that in your own lives. When there are times in your life when there were things that a major change in your life, a job change or something like that, where you're moving, or maybe something passing away in your family, or of a pet or something like that. Did you notice some kind of change? Because that seems to be a correlation. Also, you're talking about how that affects people, being with people. I know for me, in my personal experience, being with other people I get very distracted from other people. Instead of being present in the moment, when I'm alone, I'm much more present in the moment, if that makes sense. But with other people, it's if there's the conversation, you're worrying about the other person's thinking, what the other person's doing, all that, instead of very much around you and all that. So for me, it affects me quite dramatically.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It's certain people. Like some people distract me, some people enhance me. Like it depends what kind of vibe they have.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
There's so many variables involved in this, from liminal spaces to dramatic changes in your life, to all sorts of things. And just being in the right place in the right time, you know what I mean? And how to get to that right place at the right time is part of the question here, right? How do we have a clear understanding of the messages we're receiving, and the visions that we're seeing, or the images that we're seeing, the presentations? Because I think a lot of it is too, it's kind of because we're dealing with like the plasmic realm and the quantum physics realm. The presentation is a big thing. It's being in the right time, the right place. The lighting has to be right. It's all sorts of variables, right?
Right.
And it's hard. It's the thing with what we're dealing with. You can't reproduce this in the lab. It's like what you were talking about. Not astral projecting. What was the other one?
Remote viewing.
Remote viewing. So that's really. I mean, the people I talk to who do that, they all confess that it's a lot of hit and miss. It's not. There's not consistency in their own adventure or remote viewing. So why is that? What are the variables? Yeah. Is it, maybe you didn't get enough sleep, maybe you're really tired, maybe you're hungry, maybe you go to the bathroom, all sorts of variables that get in the way, man. It's really true.
You gotta wonder too sometimes if they're hitting the right timeline, like, you know what I mean? Because like there's, again, like you said, there's so many variables like that come into this stuff.
Right. Yeah, there's a whole lot of possibilities, especially with something that's so unknown.
Yeah. Way back in the beginning, MT, way back to the beginning, you were saying something about like I think they were saying something about like the verbiage crossing the dimensions, and I think that might be like the telepathic, the mind speak that people talk about, which is like, as well, it's coming through to like the devices, but I think it also is why like certain people like myself will receive like telepathy and mind speak from them and be able to communicate back and forth without having like a visual on the target, so to speak.
And then there's another variable, and that is like from my experience, the first time that I heard what they call samurai chatter, right? There was nothing visible there. I mean, I heard it, the gal next to me, she heard it, we both heard the samurai chatter, right? And we all looked in the same direction where it was coming from. We even walked to where it came from, and there was no sign of any Bigfoot of any sort, but we both heard it. So how did that happen? You know what I mean?
Well, like you were saying, those sheets of paper you walk through, like the grid, and like I describe it so similarly. Like I say, like it's like cellophane, because sometimes like it's right there, and like we might not be able to physically see it or touch it, or but it's there, and like sometimes the sound comes through, but there's no visual. Sometimes they kind of like poke through a little bit and like peek in. Sometimes they break through it and come through, and like it's just like you were saying, like just it's so. I mean, the guy was saying it too. Like it's all so relevant. It's just like a matter of like, what do you put it into play with different spirits and different beings and different things like, and then where do we fit in the picture?
Yeah, that's like multi-dimensional aspect of pretty much most of everything that we experience. And they talk about higher dimensions coming through. That would according to some of the things that I've heard, that sounds just like some of the experiences. Something coming through and peaking, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
Something saying something, and there's nothing.
You guys saw it with that squid thing, and I wanted to jump up and down and say a bunch of things when that happened, and like a lot of times the things you guys go through, I'm like, I just sit back and just kind of wait, and just if you guys come to me for something, I give you my response. But I think that thing was attracted to the red light that one time. It was, I believe, the first time you guys used that red light, and I don't know what it was about it, but I think it kind of screwed that thing up, whatever the hell it was, and it came through and was like, oh, then backed out, Yeah.
Ian, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, I think the thing with, you were saying that, those results and experimentation really can't be replicated in a lab. Well, I think the lab, we just don't have a lab that's that advanced yet, talking about consciousness and multi-dimensions and quantum physics. I mean, like, in order to, keep replicating that and saying for 100% certainty, what's going on, then you're going to need, like, a lab on, like, a God type level, wouldn't you?
Pretty much. I mean, that's great way to say it, right? We've really synced into super conscious or the super mind or the force that we're talking about to really be synced into it. which I think our true essence desires that in some way, right? We want to be synced into this. We really want to know what the reality is, because we live in a world right now where there's so many. It's a lot of confusion. It truly is a lot. The more you do this, it should make you reflect on the world that you live in and what kind of place are we really living in.
Yeah, I think it's all connected, like your intentions and feelings, and even just like you know, like say if you have like you put like a pentagram on the wall, or you know, like something satanic, or even just like a picture of like an evil person or an evil, I don't know, spirit or drawing or something like that. In itself, I think I've heard it, at least it can bring some kind of energy to it, and it can, you know, give bad feelings and juju, I guess, to the place.
But you're talking about the sigil, and they say the pentagram, the circle in it. Some people use that as positive things. And here's an irony thing: if you look at early history, say Christians, they used to have that on their church. They used to have windows. You can go look it up. The old churches, they have that pentagram on their church. So then you're like, you know, it's about how you, it's what you, the value and that sigil that you put on it. It has no power in this, what you put on it, right? You know what I mean? It comes back to like this whole thing about devils and monsters and gargoyles and all that kind of stuff. You know, we've been brainwashed and saying because they made them to be, you know, hideous looking creatures that somehow, because of their look, they're evil. But the more I study this stuff, there's a lot of things out there in the forest and around us that look like gargoyles and Bigfoot and weird things, but they didn't do anything to me. They didn't do anything to me. And the more I became more detached from it, tried not to put a label on it, the more positive things happen. So I think it really goes back to your intent and how much you put on, say, the sigil, the image that you're working with, right? It could be, it's kind of like the statues of Mary, right? People put, those are Roman Catholic, not there, I'm not trying to offend you, but you put a lot of emphasis and belief in that statue, and then things revolve around that, right? And if you take away that value from it, then that has no more power in your life and influence, right? It's an imagery. It's you know, a man-made imagery, especially other people's. This is part of the problem too, and the influence of other people's biases, and then corrupt our own perception of things. And this way, it's almost like you have to let go of a lot. At least I had to let go of a lot of my biases, a lot of them, in order to have.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm done.
I was just gonna say, do you think people can put negative, like permanently put negative energy or feelings into like a location? Then maybe not just with like images or icons.
Well,
or
we know that this kind of these things can happen, but I do believe that each and every one of us has the power to override that.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. And we have our own power to override that negative juju, if you will, the sorcery that happens, right? And part of it is just letting go of it, not recognize it, or dismissing it, or override it and say, you know what? Nope.
Saying you have no power over me.
right.
That's right.
The power, yeah. It could be right there, but you know, yeah. There's that old saying, like the evil wolf and the positive wolf, or whatever. You know, like which one's stronger, whichever one you feed, right? Like.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. And this goes back to your guys' research, you know, how you're going to go about in the field, what kind of mindset do you need to have in order to have the optimum chance of having some kind of interaction or experience, right? It's very interesting. This is why I call us digital shamans. This is why my other show, or other channel is called O.R.D, the Fortean Digital Shaman, is because we do live in a Fortean reality. And we are behaving in a way like the shamans of old had to use different kinds of ceremonies and different types of drugs and all that kind of stuff. But now we're using the technology that we have now to have these experiences. We are becoming digital shamans through our cameras, through our devices. You know, do you understand what I'm getting at? I mean, these are the experiences you couldn't have had. There's no way that that we could consistently, from the number of people that have, say maybe 20 years ago, without like the digital camera and just for one example. So I think that this is a great conversation. It's something that we need to keep on pursuing. And I think like you guys, you're connecting the dots for using Bigfoot research along with paranormal research is really the path to go. Now it would be interesting to also add UFOologist to the mix if you guys can find someone like that, right? Because this now brings me to like guys like John A. Keel. If you guys haven't read his books, I strongly recommend you do, because he's a guy that influenced all of us in this room. He's no longer with us, but he has some amazing books, and guys like John A. Keel and his research on Bigfoot and cryptids and the paranormal and ufology, and he's the one who's saying 70 years ago that they're all connected. And so it's funny, we're coming back to the same thing that literally groups of similar men and women 70 years ago doing. We're coming back to the same realization as we but they were telling us, you know, it's just like, it's almost like it has to be a generational thing or something, or a group thing. I mean, you know, why
curiosity, right? Curiosity is the biggest thing, I think.
Right, but then the group comes in, and you'll see this in ufology, you'll see this in the paranormal. You probably guys in the paranormal, you'll see this, and definitely I see it in the Bigfoot community. This cliquish mentality, and that if you don't follow the mainstream narratives, you are ceremonially kicked out. You know what I mean? And ostracized. Which, by the way, I think living on the fringe when it comes to all this stuff is the best place to be to get closer to the truth. It's
That's
not.
why I try not to get too like. I don't branch out too much to like really see what else is going on, because I feel like, I mean, part of it I can see, you know, like I've learned some pretty good things since I did look out and reach out, but for the most part I really just stick with what I feel like is the right plan for what I want to do, and just stick with that. And you know, to me, that's the norm. I really don't, you know, try to tweak it, but not bend too much.
Yeah,
So I'm easily distracted. So sorry about that, LT. About to say this. So for me, I don't watch television. I haven't watched television in a decade. I don't watch 99.9% of what's on the internet. I don't pay attention to what the world's doing, because all these things. I mean, Mike, MT Mike, you heard earlier, you know, the issue that was going on with me and my ex and my son and all that. These are all distractions, right? So I have to minimize as much as possible in order to stay level-headed and thinking in the right direction I want to be. I think we all have to do that. So I think that's like to get closer to the goal that we want, we have to minimize as many of the external distractions out there. They're offered up by other people, right?
Oh,
Well,
yeah,
I was going to go ahead.
Lots of distractions.
I was going to go ahead and end it for the night, but I wanted to give you guys any last thoughts that you wanted to bring up before we go. So,
I thought one thing I would like to add is, like, you can find, you know, like any kind of paranormal activity in like the most ordinary of places. For example, even just my parents' house that I'm in right now, my stepmom that lives here, she said that she heard a voice one time when there was nobody there. So I was like, let's go and investigate here. And I end up getting like cat ball activity here, REM pods going off. Even I was investigating last night, and I was using the SLS camera, and I was going to tell you about this, MT. I was using the SLS camera, and that like the figures kind of looked like they were convulsing or shaking, but what they all had in common was that I was in the basement investigating here, and all the figures were laying horizontally. And I thought that was interesting because we're underground, you know?
Yeah. Any you guys got any last thoughts you want to share?
I'll say something real fast, and then Long Island Mike ended. So, thank you, gentlemen, for allowing me. MT, thank you for inviting me, man. It's good to hear from you.
Thank you.
Long Island Mike, thank you for joining us, and it's good talking to you again, bro. And
Good
Ian,
one.
it was nice to meet you, and everyone else in the room. Thank you for
Me
listening.
too, man.
Good luck in you guys' research. And I don't know if we got any closer to any of the answers, but well, at least we can recognize similarities, right?
I'd like to say that I understand where you're coming from, where you get excited and you like about everything. I definitely do myself, and I find like everything. I always like to soak up knowledge and information. You know.
Right. LIB, you got anything on your mind you want to share?
No, I'm good. I mean, thank you for having me. I mean, I talk too much anyway. Thank you for having me. It was good to see you guys and everyone in chat.
Yeah, it was good to see you guys. Hope this happens again. I enjoyed it.
Before I take off,
Get you guys to come on my show too.
oh
right?
yeah, I'll do
That's
that.
Watch
Oh, you got a
Confessions.
show too?
I got a couple. I got my own, the Lord of
Yeah,
O.R.D.
Ian.
We maybe started a new show, Sasquatch Confessions and Friends. So
Yeah, I was going to say, Ian, and anybody in chat who doesn't know LIB, Long Island Bigfoot, or Lord of O.R.D., I've got links to their channels. I even have them up in the chat too. You can go and check out all their content. You know,
I'm sure LIB will be on their show soon. I'm sure of that. So
I just want to say thank you guys. You know, thank you for joining me, and we had a great show, and I think this is a great time, and we'll have to do it again.
Absolutely, bro.
Oh yeah, I think we just scratched the surface on all that stuff.
Oh yeah, and to build on what you said before I go, Ian, about how like you don't have to be anywhere what you would call like special to encounter
Or
things,
famous.
to interact, or to have experiences, and that's been one of my main points since I've started doing this, because I've come up with some things that I felt maybe help, and being out in the middle of nowhere, out in the woods, like a lot of people kind of ask about that, like, why are you searching for paranormal activity just out in the middle of the woods nowhere? And all I can say is, watch and
we
you'll
have to
see.
do a show about that, MT. We got to do a show about that, and the paranormal, or the forest poltergeist, and the energy that's going in there. We have to do another show about that. That's I'm convinced that you're going to have a better chance having a paranormal experience in the woods than you are in your home. Just because of the factors involved. That's all. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I know the energy, right? I've always said that from the beginning, even before I really didn't dig into looking up and formulating, calculating things. Like, I calculated how much voltage potential there is, like in the atoms of a basic tree, of the carbon atoms. And that alone will tell you, like, I got from the form, I did some conversions, but an average size oak tree that's like 100 feet tall, 2,200 pounds, doing the conversion to the E-volts for the potential energy, it's like 17,000 volts of potential energy just in the carbon atoms of like an average size oak tree. So I've always felt that there's something about the energy just being out around a dense area of trees, and I'm pretty sure anybody.
I would love to do a show about that, bro. You know that.
Yeah.
I would love to do a show about
And I think pretty much you guys all probably feel the same way about the energy out everywhere you go, really.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, guys. I appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and shut her down for the night. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. All the chat. Couldn't do this without you. All of our channels. And happy Valentine's Day again.
Same
Good night,
as you.
everyone.
Yep. Happy
Take care,
Valentine's Day.
everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Squatch out.